Discover the sinister secrets of the cursed house, 10 terrifying years of haunted mystery exposed. Sarah's heart raced as she stepped through the creaking doorway of her new home, a modest fixer-upper nestled in the sleepy suburbs of Ohio. Around her, the neighborhood hummed with life, a symphony of laughter, kids chasing each other in yards, barbecues sizzling with summer delights. Yet, a shadow loomed over her. She could feel it even before she heard the whispers. "Did you hear about the teacher who disappeared?" they'd murmur, eyes darting toward her, silently piercing through her fragile resolve. Her 2 children, Lily and Max, eagerly explored their new backyard while Sarah unpacked in the suffocating silence of the house. Every rustle of the old wooden frame felt like a caress from the past, sending chills down her spine. That night, as darkness enveloped them, Sarah tried to shake off the unease gnawing at her guts. The strange sounds of rustling and soft whispers drifted through the walls, lulling her with a false sense of calm. When Lily skipped into the room, eyes wide, clutching her stuffed bunny tightly, her words sent a chill through Sarah. "Mommy, there's a shadow man in the backyard. He watches us." Sarah smiled, her voice wavering, dismissing it as a child's wild imagination. But when Max chimed in, "I hear the whispers, Mommy," in the walls, heat prickled at the back of her neck. "Just silly nightmares," Sarah coaxed, but the dread was palpable, hanging like thick smoke in her chest. Days passed, yet whispers about the previous owner reverberated around her like a haunting melody. A teacher everyone revered but who had vanished without a trace over a decade ago. The sun-drenched, cheerful lawns were veils for hidden truths, and glances from neighbors often greeted Sarah with unreadable expressions and hushed tones. As her efforts to connect with locals were met with a chilling wall of silence, her heart sank deeper. Then, the news struck hard: 2 children had gone missing from the community. The world around her warped into a distorted reflection of fractured trust. One evening, at a local carnival, the air thick with cheerful screams and laughter, Sarah felt her heart pulse with foreboding. When she turned to check on her children, they had vanished into the throng of brightly colored tents and laughter. Panic gripped her like a vice, her legs trembling, breath short. "Where are they?" she shrieked, eyes darting wildly. The worried faces of parents surrounded her, finger-pointing, hushed conversations filled the air. Gripping the sides of her rapidly fading hope, Sarah felt the weight of suspicion crash down on her. The whispers were no longer just echoes. They were warning her, pulling her toward the harrowing truth. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Sand whirled in the air as she called their names, a desperate scream lost among the chaotic screams of laughter. The vibrant faces around her blurred the carnival's joy, twisted into a nightmare. Time thundered forward without mercy, the shadows stretched menacingly, beckoning her to uncover the sordid truths buried beneath a rosy facade. Sudden realization gripped her: the teacher's good deeds weren't what they seemed. More like a predator cloaked in benevolence. The similar faces, neighbors with kind smiles now transformed, were shrouded in horror. The flickering light from the backyard caught her eye, an apparition, familiar yet terrifying. As darkness loomed closer and Max's small hand slipped away, the question echoed: who could she trust when behind every cheerful facade, shadows intertwined with chilling secrets? Sarah's breath hitched as she pushed through the crowd, panic twisting her insides like a vice. "Lily. Max." Her voice broke through the carnival's cacophony, but all she got was the echo of her own fear. The bright lights blurred into a kaleidoscope of predatory colors, each one whispering taunts in her ears. She felt eyes watching, waiting, lurking behind the swirling moments of festivity. A creeping dread settled over her. It was only as she stumbled out of the crowd, heart pounding, that she caught sight of something in the corner of her eye, a flash of white by the Ferris wheel. It couldn't be, but the more she squinted, the more she felt an undeniable pull toward it. She pushed forward, squeezing past parents and children who only glanced at her with puzzled expressions. "Mommy." It was Lily's voice. A sharp, piercing sound that sliced through the haze of noise. Sarah's heart accelerated. She surged through the throng like a furious river, each heartbeat drumming a warning. "Lily. Where are you?" She reached the base of the Ferris wheel and hesitated, scanning the illuminated parts of the ride. There it was again, the glimmer of white just behind the loading area. Threads of dread whispered through her mind, weaving a rug of second thoughts. What if the whispers were more than just echoes? Just a game. Just a game, she muttered, forcing herself to duck beneath the rail and push past the workers. The sound of the carnival dimmed as she entered the shadowed area behind the wheel. Her body was tense, every muscle held taut like a drawn bowstring. The light grew dimmer and dimmer until she stumbled into a cramped alleyway, barely lit by flickering bulbs strung from overhead. And then smoke, thick and sweet, enveloped her senses. She coughed once, then a second time, fighting against the choking panic that threatened to engulf her. "Lily." In the unsettling silence, the shadows shifted. Shapes glided around her, but she couldn't make them out. Just where, as if choreographed with the pull of fate, she heard her daughter's giggle, echoing sinisterly. It twisted Sarah's heart and froze her in place. "Mommy. Come play." The voice was light and airy, familiar but mixed with something unnatural. It beckoned her, pulling her deeper into the smog. Shaking, Sarah took a tentative step. The ground shifted under her feet. A figure emerged from the murk, grinning. A face she had feared. It was half lit, half in shadows of the alley, a grotesque smile spreading impossibly wide. A shiver rattled through her as she recognized it. No. This was the exact face they showed in the neighborhood flyer about the teacher, the one who was supposed to be a hero, the one who vanished. "Your children are safe here," the figure whispered, its voice an echo of something long dead. "It's a trap." A raw voice seized Sarah, bursting from her chest like a cannon. Spinning on her heels, she plunged back into the carnival chaos. But joy now warped itself into noise, a cacophony of laughter that struck as hauntingly discord from every direction. In the frantic search, she glimpsed a pair of tiny shoes disappearing behind a booth, and her heart leaped. It was Lily. "No!" she screamed, reaching out as if to grasp the impossible. But just as quickly, they vanished. Shadows scuttled, dragging her deep into the fabric of the carnival's malignant pulse. Heart pounding, Sarah caught the eyes of parents around her, eyes wide with fear. Their expressions mirrored her own, confusion turning to concern as whispers rippled through the gathering crowd. Was she the only one that saw it all? Without a moment's delay, she bolted back toward their house, certainty buzzing in her veins. The darkness would lead to her children. If she could find the heart of the whispers, the root of the shadows, perhaps she could untangle the web before it ensnared her entirely. But the true horror lay not just in her search for Lily and Max. It was the realization dawning within her: they were not the only ones who had vanished from this neighborhood. And somewhere hidden among the cheerful facades were those who knew the truth, those who wanted more than just to play. As Sarah pounded towards home, each step weighed heavier than the last. She couldn't shake the feeling. Something was waiting for her. Something that wouldn't let her escape. What unspeakable secrets would she unearth if she dared to confront the source of the whispers? The air felt heavy as Sarah sprinted through the streets, her heart hammering in her chest like a war drum. Each shadow seemed to stretch toward her, flickering like the lights of the carnival still buzzing in her ears. But the shouts had faded. Now, all that remained was a chilling silence, a deafening void filled with echoes of laughter that twisted into whispers. She pushed open the front gate, its familiar creak now sounding sinister. The quaint house she had lived in for years felt foreign in the dark. Every window loomed like hollow eyes staring back at her, and the porch light flickered, casting restless shadows that danced across the steps. Sarah hesitated, feeling a persistent prickle at the back of her neck. "Lily. Max." She called again, voice shaking, but only the sound of her own desperation answered back. She crossed the threshold, heart racing, and instinctively switched on the lights. They flickered, struggled, and then steadied, casting an uncomfortable glow throughout the living room. Nothing stirred, the silence was thick, like a heavy blanket suffocating the air, and with it came a gnawing sense of dread. Sarah's hands trembled, her fingers grazed the edges of the furniture as she moved through the small rooms. She glanced at family photos on the wall, they felt like ghostly observers. Smiles frozen in time, none of them could signal the impending nightmare that shadowed them now. Something felt fundamentally wrong. Her mind swirled with thoughts, dark and twisted. What if they were gone forever? In the corner of her eye, movement caught her attention. The door to the basement was ajar, unusual, considering she always kept it locked. A sense of terror washed over her. Had someone been there? It pulled at her, that damned curiosity, the same impulse that drove her to search for her children. Lily. Max. She shouted once more, her voice cracking. Silence answered back, and terror flared within her. She had to know. Taking a deep breath, she crept toward the edge of the door. Each step dragged the steel of apprehension through her veins. She flicked the light switch, but the bulb buzzed and flickered, offering insufficient illumination. Tentatively, she descended the creaking steps, swallowed by the blackness. Each footfall strained her nerves, the air thick with dust and something rancid. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she reached the bottom, pulse loud in her ears. Sudden movement in the corner of her vision made her jump. A long shadow stretched across the wall, then dissolved into the dark. Lily? She ventured further into the gloom, a phantom chill curling up her spine, but nothing returned her call. And then, from the deepest recesses of the basement, she heard it, a faint giggle, clear as day. Mommy. Come play. Every hair on her body stood on end. It was her daughter's laugh, yet twisted, vibrating with an unnatural tone. Sarah's stomach lurched. She stepped forward, drawn deeper into the abyss. There, in the corner of the room, stacked upon each other, were toys, Lily's toys, crushed and broken as if discarded carelessly. And surrounding them were crumpled photographs, faces grinning wide, all familiar yet wrong. It was a parade of missing children, their eyes glassy and vacant. Sarah's breath quickened, panic clawing at her throat. No. She gasped, stumbling back. Shadows shifted as if reacting to her fear, and suddenly the basement door slammed shut. The sound echoed in the hollow confines of the house, a forceful reminder of her entrapment. Rattling the doorknob only deepened her dread. It wouldn't budge. She was not just caught in an empty house, she had stepped into a dark lair of haunting memories. Tears sprang to her eyes. Where was Lily? Where was Max? Then, just as she felt the weight of despair settle, she spotted a slight shift in the darkness. A form stepped forward, backlit by a sliver of fading light. Welcome back, Sarah. It whispered, voice syrupy sweet but twisted with malice. Her world narrowed into that single point of terror. Fear clawed at her, and with it the chilling realization of how deep she had fallen into the eye of an overwhelming storm. What had she stepped into? And what else was waiting in the dark, just beyond her understanding? The figure loomed closer, shadowy and indistinct, but Sarah could feel its presence swelling with an eager hunger. The walls of the basement closed in, the air thickening like treacle, choking out her screams. Who are you? She managed, her voice hoarse, slicing through the oppressive silence. The figure laughed, a chilling sound that echoed and twisted, morphing into a sound that was eerily reminiscent of her daughter's laughter. You really don't remember? It's been such a long time. Confusion swirled inside her like a cyclone. Memories flooded in fragments of laughter, warmth, playdates, birthday parties intermingled with something darker. The sense of a previous life before all the shadows and whispers crept in. But as the figure shifted again, she recognized the blurred outline that congealed into her worst nightmare mother, the darkness that had haunted her childhood. You thought you could escape, it crooned, hands outstretched, fingers curling like claws. But you brought this upon yourself. You always were too curious. Panic ignited within Sarah. She stumbled backward, desperation clawing at her heart. What do you want from me? Where are my kids? Her heart thundered against her ribcage. Every fiber of her existence urged her to flee, to break free from this monstrous trap. But the realization of her helplessness tethered her to the spot, as shadows rippled and warped around her. "They're just playing." The figure cooed, a twisted smile twisting across its face. "Remember how you told them to never go into the basement? Time to learn your lesson, Sarah." With a gut-wrenching rip of her dreams, Sarah turned to the door, ready to claw at it, scream until her voice cracked. But the wood was sturdy as stone. "Let me out!" she shrieked, scrabbling against it, tears blurring her vision. The figure erupted into laughter, the tone thick with satisfaction. "You're home now. Just like them." A flicker of movement caught her eye. Among the ruined toys, a small figure emerged. It was Lily, her hair disheveled, her face smeared with streaks of dirt, looking up at her mother with wide, glistening eyes. But something was markedly off. The light caught her features, twisted and stretched in a way that didn't belong to a child. "Mommy, play with us," she said, voice echoing hollow, like a bell tolling in empty cathedrals. "Lily!" Sarah cried, reaching toward her, but her child recoiled, moving back into the shadows like a specter. "Lily, please." Then Max lurked from behind her sister, his gaze also vacant, his form eerily drifting deeper into the darkness. The laughter swelled, grotesque and haunting, like a symphony playing just off-key. "Join us, Mommy." Lily's voice twisted with mockery. The basement began to pulse, flickering lights casting hellish patterns against the walls as shadows danced in wicked glee. "No!" Sarah screamed, terror spiking through her as she turned away from her children, feeling betrayal and despair claw at her chest. "You're not my kids." The figure breathed in sharply, leaning forward, the smile deepening. "Then why are you here? You've come for them, haven't you? Or are you here to play a different game?" Sarah's mind reeled. She was trapped not just within these walls, but inside a nightmarish carousel of fear. With the instinct of a cornered animal, she shoved against the door one last time, thumping it with all her strength. The door shuddered then, surprisingly, clicked open, spilling light into the obsidian void, casting the figure's form into sharp relief. "Run, Sarah! You can't escape your fate!" It shrieked just before she dashed out, launching herself up the stairs, fueled by adrenaline, heart pounding, staggering to regain her balance. She reached the door to the living room, skidding to a halt. The house felt larger now, and the floor beneath her twisted as if the house itself was feeding on her fear, and then she heard it again, that insidious giggle echoing from the depths of the basement. It was calling, beckoning her. Was her family down there? Or had she opened the door to something far more? Sinister, abandoning her thoughts, she turned, gasping for air, sliding into the living room, where a shadow flitted by the window. She wasn't alone. "Mommy, come play, we miss you." What was waiting outside? She had to know. Sarah's heart raced, pounding within her chest like a desperate drum, each beat echoing the chaos in her mind. The shadows crept forward, and the light from the living room flickered ominously, as if it were struggling against the darkness that lay just beyond. That chilling whisper lingered in the air, wrapping around her like a spider's web. "Mommy, come play." The voice was hauntingly familiar, yet deeply wrong. She knew instinctively it wasn't her children calling. It couldn't be. Sweat dripped down the back of her neck, pooling at her spine. She stumbled backward, feeling the wall press against her, a hard boundary between her and the growing terror. Through wide eyes, she scanned the room, searching for anything that could help. The furniture loomed like menacing giants, their corners sharpened, shadows pooling around them, shifting toward her. The giggle returned, light and mocking, spilling from the corner of the room where the curtains fluttered as if caught in a breeze. Sarah gritted her teeth, recalling that laugh. It was unmistakably Lily's. The sound must have been a cruel imitation, a trick that sent shivers racing down her limbs. She couldn't stay here. "Max!" she shouted, hoping to summon both her son and the courage she desperately needed. "Lily! Answer me!" Silence draped over her like a heavy blanket, smothering her cries. For a moment, she dared to hope maybe they were hiding, playing their own game while waiting for her to find them. But then she heard it again, softer now. "Mommy, we're waiting." This time it was as if the voice slid along her spine, pulling at her very being, tempting her to surrender to the unseen grasp reaching into her world. Nerves frayed and panic spiraled, Sarah bolted for the front door. Her fingers fumbled at the knob, slipping in her watery sweat. She twisted and rattled it, but it wouldn't budge. The house felt alive, every beam and nail tightening, ensnaring her in its grip. Footsteps echoed from the corridor, a soft tapping sound that grew louder, methodical, drawing closer. The shadows shivered and danced as if coming alive. She turned, heart thumping violently against her ribs, and stepped back as a dark shape formed by the light of the cracked doorframe, its outline shifting like oil in water. "Mommy." Lily called again, clearer, like a command. The figure was becoming more defined, familiar yet distinctly wrong. The eyes glimmered wet, alien in their brightness. "Mommy, you shouldn't be scared." Cold dread gripped her throat. This wasn't her child. Her own voice echoed through her thoughts, "Your children are safe, remember the basement." "Get away from me," she shouted, voice cracking, desperation spilling from her lips as the darkness advanced slowly, undulating in mocking waves. In a moment of instinct, she swiveled, darting toward the kitchen, a twisted plan forming in her mind. She could barricade herself. She lunged for the knife block, grasping a blade that glinted cold and sharp under the fluorescent lights. "Mommy will protect you," shouted the figure, striding forward, laughter bubbling dangerously from its throat. "Get away," Sarah shrieked, brandishing the knife as if it were a shield against the dark. The house vibrated with tension, and suddenly, the air thickened, pushing back against her desperate energy. "Come play, Sarah," the figure taunted, the lights flickering and dimming around them. Images swirled in her mind, snippets of a suffocating childhood, her mother's twisted smile. They were all part of this, the laughter, the darkness, her profound fear. Everything felt intertwined. But something else stirred within her, a flicker of defiance. As the figure reached out, Sarah held her ground, fear transforming into an almost primal rage. A memory tugged at her, a promise she once made to always protect her children. She would fight, not just for herself, but for them. The laughter transformed, twisting as it battled against an unseen force, rising louder, bracing against her resolve. "Who are you?" she demanded, gripping the knife tighter. Her voice echoed through the gloom. "Everything you have ever feared." The walls trembled, vibrating, starting to close in once more. Shadows converged like a storm. And then she saw it, a chill of realization. The basement, the source, the heart of the darkness. As the shadows enveloped her, she bolted toward the living room door, knowing she must face whatever lay below. But as she reached for the doorknob, she felt it slip through her fingers, and the house let out a wail, an anguished roar, drowning her screams. Unseen hands gripped her ankles, pulling her down, threatening to drag her back into the abyss. "What have you awakened?" It echoed through the house, a spine-chilling whisper that cut through her. And then, a voice, soft and desperate among the chaos. "Mommy, please help us." Sarah was left dangling between the darkness and the hope of her children. She had to go back, had to face the terror lurking behind the door. What awaited her in the basement? The choice clawed at her resolve, but time was slipping away. Would she dive back into that nightmare? The walls seemed to pulse, hungry and eager, as Sarah stood immobile, caught between fear and determination. She could feel the cold grip of the unseen hands tightening around her ankles, dragging her toward the dark maw of the basement. Panic surged like ice through her veins. She couldn't let this entity pull her under. "Let me go," she screamed, twisting and yanking her legs free. She slammed her back against the wall, the knife shaking in her grip, an unsteady reminder of her resolve. The mocking laughter echoed through the air, freezing her breath in her throat. Then, with every ounce of courage she could muster, she wrenched the doorknob, determined to break free. It twisted and turned under her frantic hands. Each rattling sound sent tremors of sweat coursing down her spine. With a desperate push, she threw her weight against the door, and it finally creaked open. The air was thick with dust and darkness as she stepped into the hallway. Each step felt like a stomp into quicksand. Shadows flickered on the walls around her, sinister forms molding and reforming in the dim light. The laughter of the figure faded, replaced by her children's voices. "Mommy, help us." Their cries spilled from the basement door, pure and haunting, echoing her own fears. "Max! Lily!" she shouted, plunging forward, each call lower her voice until it trembled into silence. The basement beckoned a gaping chasm that loomed over her, the flaws in the woodwork creaking like bones. She hesitated at the top of the stairs, heart racing as she peered into the inky blackness. What awaited her down there? The shadows moved like liquid, coiling and twisting. "Whatever it is, I'm not afraid," she whispered to herself, a mantra of defiance. With steely resolve, Sarah descended the creaking steps, the knife held out before her. Each step made the wood groan beneath her weight, threatening to give in. Closer and closer, she moved as darkness enveloped her. The air thickened, icy fingers brushing her arms. She could sense it, the shape watching her, a presence that thrummed with malevolence, waiting, hungry. And then, she heard it again, tiny giggles. Not just one but two. It was her children but twisted. "Mommy, come play," they chimed together, the innocent familiarity warped into something sinister. She gasped, heart constricting with the horror of realization. This wasn't a game. This was a trap. "Mommy." Their voices took on an urgent plea, almost as if they were drowning, mixing with the laughter that spun like a cyclone of dread around her. "No!" she screamed, forcing her feet to move again, deeper into the basement. No time to hesitate. She had to find them. A flickering light caught her attention, a dim bulb dangled from the ceiling, illuminating a small corner. There, amid the abyss, lay a pile of old toys, their toys. The sight lanced through her, an anchor drawing her sanity closer while the darkness clawed at her edges. Dust-covered and broken, their little trinkets glimmered like forgotten stars. "I will find you," she yelled into the suffocating shadows, advancing. The sensation of eyes watching her prickled her skin. Was it in her mind, or was the darkness truly alive? Rounding a corner, she spotted a door. The walls screamed at her to turn back. Yet another voice echoed from behind it, "Mommy, please, we can come back." "Why are you doing this to me?" she shouted, fury boiling within. But the only answer was laughter that filled her with dread, wrapping around her tightly. Gripping the knife, she approached the door, trembling. What was behind it? What would she find? Once more, the whispers teased her ears. "Mommy, we need you." Taking a deep breath, she reached for the doorknob, her heart hammering in frantic rhythm. The moment her fingers touched the cold metal, a sharp draw of energy charged through her. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation, swelling into something dark and horrifying, and then the world went silent. "Mommy," what lay behind that door was the daunting question that hung in the air. Did she have the strength to unveil the truth, or would the darkness claim her forever? As Sarah turned the doorknob, a cold chill swept through her, as if the house itself was exhaling a breath held for too long. A sudden, sharp throb pulsed in her chest. She could almost feel the darkness pressing against her, urging her to turn back, to leave the voices behind. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. With a reluctant shove, the door creaked open, revealing a cramped room shrouded in shadows. The flickering bulb cast eerie shadows across the walls, each one a distorted version of the toys she'd just seen. In the center of the room, an old rickety table stood, cluttered with a jumble of items: broken dolls with cracked faces, toy cars with rusted wheels, and something that looked disturbingly like a blood-stained dress. "Mommy," they called again, the sound echoing in her mind. It was becoming unbearable. She stepped inside, shivering at the sensation of cold fingers brushing her skin, twisting her thoughts, embedding doubts. She glanced around, her mind racing. Where were they? The air felt thick, charged with a sense of impending doom. A voice, soft and mechanical, whispered from a dusty corner. Do you want to play a game, Sarah? What do you mean? Where are my children? She stammered, but her own voice felt foreign, low and shaky against the oppressive silence that a hoarse chuckle erupted from the shadows, reverberating with malicious glee. They're here, lost, just as you are. As if answering the taunt, a shadow flickered abruptly near the far wall, and two figures emerged. Max and Lily stood there, their faces pale, eyes wide and glowing. They looked like themselves, yet utterly wrong. They were laughing, but the mirth was hollow, a facade hiding their terror. "Mommy! Save us!" They chorused, a spine-chilling harmony that sent ice coursing through Sarah's veins. The children gestured wildly toward the door behind them, a door that looked similar to the one she had just come through, but somehow more sinister. Swallowing hard, Sarah took a tentative step forward. "What is going on?" "I'm here." Her voice trembled, uncertainty creeping into every syllable. The children's laughter stopped abruptly. They stared blankly, and then one of them stepped closer, sudden and unervingly fluid. "Mommy, we're not alone." Her heart sank. It was true, the air thickened, the shadows growing darker, pulsating as if they held hearts of their own. Each sound echoed, bouncing off the walls, a whispered invitation, a siren's song wrapping around her. "Don't you want to play, Mommy?" A third voice joined in, dripping with malice. It crawled under her skin. The room seemed to tilt, the walls began to stretch inward. The floor groaned as if alive, shifting and undulating beneath her feet. Fear unfurled in her stomach. She took a step back. "No. Not this." Max and Lily reached out, their small hands desperate, but the darkness swelled, filling the space between them like a shadowy barrier. "I will find you," she yelled, but panic clawed at her throat, choking her words into silence. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from behind her, followed by the distant sound of something slithering long and slick. Her instincts screamed at her to escape, to seize her children and run. But what if it really was a trap? "Mommy! We need you!" The chorus echoed again, more frantic now. Perhaps they needed her, or perhaps the game had changed. A plan quickly formed in her mind. Without thinking, she lunged for her children. Their shivering forms glimmered just out of reach. "Mommy!" They cried, their voices rising above the chaos, twisted into something almost unrecognizable. Suddenly, the lights flickered once more. In that moment of wavering brightness, she caught a single glimpse of something huge and lurking behind them, a grotesque outline that seemed to shift and swell like smoke. "What am I doing?" She barely held on to her sanity as the door slammed shut behind her, and the room plunged into utter darkness. "Mommy, it's time to play this time." There was no laughter, only the suffocating silence of the lone child's plea lingering in the air. Would she confront the entity? To reach them or dive deeper into its insidious game? In that agonizing moment, Sarah knew, either she would face the nightmare head-on, or she would lose everything forever: her children, her grip on reality, her very soul. But out of the darkness, another whisper rose, soft but insistent. "You have one chance." What chance could that be? And was she brave enough to take it? The darkness enveloped Sarah like a suffocating shroud, her breath quickening as the air grew denser. A shiver ran through her as she fought off the rising tide of panic. "Stay calm," she whispered to herself, the words barely a sound in the oppressive silence. She strained her ears, listening for anything, a whisper from Lily, a giggle from Max. Instead, there was only the soft rustle of movement, like the swish of a tail across the floorboards. She cast her hands out in front of her, the world reduced to the echo of her own heartbeat and the cold fabric of the walls that boxed her in. "Max! Lily!" She called out again, her voice trembling. And in response, a cold, low chuckle rippled through the room, slithering down her spine. The shadows began to shift, growing denser, coiling like serpents ready to strike. "Are you truly ready to play?" The mechanical voice dripped as if tasting her fear. All around her, pictures hung on the walls, once comforting family scenes now warped into grotesque parodies. Grinning faces twisted into malicious grins, their eyes glowed with a sickly light. As they stared down at her, she felt a wave of nausea churn in her stomach. Were they watching her? judging her? Mommy! Cried a tiny voice, a sound so heart-wrenching, it could only belong to her beloved children. She turned towards where she thought it came from, her heart lurching. But shadows danced before her eyes, blocking her vision, taunting her. Mommy, don't leave us. The plea echoed, a heartbreaking yet chilling call that reverberated through her very core. In that moment, she was convinced it was true, they were lost, and she was the only one who could save them. Where are you? Where are you? She cried, voice rising in desperation, as she stepped forward, feeling her way along the wall, her fingers brushing against cold surfaces that sent shivers through her. Suddenly, a hand shot out from the darkness, a small, trembling hand that gripped hers tightly. Mommy! It was Lily. Relief washed over Sarah, followed quickly by horror as she saw her daughter's face illuminated by ghostly light. Lily's eyes were empty, her skin pale and stretching, as if the laughter that once filled her had been plucked away. Lily? Sarah whimpered, her grip tightening instinctively. Is that really you? It's a long game, Lily whispered, her voice barely a thread. We're losing. Frightened, Sarah turned. The laughter had returned, but it was layered with something more sinister, a chorus of other voices joining in. You'll never find her, or him. Suddenly the ground beneath her began to tremble, the wood splintering with twisted shadows inching closer. She felt the cold breath of despair fanning against her neck, light flickering erratically above, dancing shadows creating nightmarish figures that seemed to loom over her. Run, Mommy! Screamed Max's voice, urgent and desperate, breaking through the chaos. We're trapped. Adrenaline surged through her as she yanked Lily closer, the weight of dread fading into sheer determination. Hold on to me! She shouted, retreating against the encroaching darkness. The entity that had been lurking in the corner surged forth, a mass of writhing shadows, eyes like glowing coals. Sarah backed away, clutching her child as she felt a threatening weight behind her. She remembered the door, the way they had gestured. Perhaps it held the answer. Lily, can you show me? She yelled, battling the overwhelming urge to freeze in terror. With a fatalistic endurance emerging from within her, Sarah pushed ahead, stumbling toward the oppressive weight at the door, the thought of freedom fueling her. But when she grasped the knob, it turned, only to reveal a mirror reflecting their frightened faces. No, she murmured, fear bubbling as she fought back the horror of what this house could do. Desperation ignited a surge of strength. I want to let you take my children. With a deep breath, she scanned the edges of the room, her heart racing. She needed to make her move. The shadows whispered again, one chance. Closing her eyes, she drew on the wild determination. Within. She would not be another lost soul in this house of horrors. And for just a moment, she felt the grasp of shadows loosen before tightening again, a flicker of hope buried beneath the spectral dread. It was now or never, but as she opened her eyes, ready to confront the darkness lurking behind her, a chilling realization struck. The true game had only just begun. What would be the cost? And would she emerge from the depths of this haunted nightmare? The shadows around Sarah pulsed with an unholy life of their own, crackling like faulty electricity. With every beat of her heart, she felt the darkness stretch closer, smelling of damp earth and decay. Straining against the pressure, she gripped Lily's trembling hand tighter, her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, a frantic metronome to match the chaos closing in. Your time is running out, the cruel voice taunted, echoing around her as it seemed to weave through the very walls of the room. Each syllable was a knife, cutting into her resolve, stirring the dread that gripped her throat like an iron vice. Lily, we have to move. Sarah shouted, shoving her fear aside. She had to focus. Max was still lost in the darkness. She could feel him somewhere out there, beyond patches of shifting black. The giggles that had once filled their home had turned into hostile cacophonies, taunting her with every step she took. That eye and the mirror's reflection, shadows danced angrily, a twisted mockery of her own desperate face. The cold gaze of her daughter sent chills through her like a warning, but now was not the time for doubt. Where did Max go? She urged, trying to keep her voice steady. Mommy. Lily's voice trembled, the walls breathe. If we don't hurry, we'll be part of them. What did that even mean? Panic clawed at Sarah as she jerked her head toward the nearest wall. It looked solid, but deep down, a primal instinct told her the walls were alive. Creaking, folding hungry. "Follow me," she urged, dragging Lily with her as she stumbled away from the mirror. The laughter grew louder, like a rising storm, racing toward a deafening crescendo. Fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead, sending flashes of blinding light that briefly illuminated shapes lurking just out of reach. She pulled Lily into a narrow corridor lined with more mirrors, each one with its own horrific face peering back at her. It felt like stepping into a hall of death. The reflections contorted, some twisted into grotesque smiles while others mirrored anguished cries. "No, no, no." And then she heard it. A soft whimper, a plea bubbling in the depth of the shadows. It was Max. "Help. Mommy, please. Max." Sarah screamed, the echo of his name swallowed whole by the growing noise. She ran ahead, leading Lily, heart pounding as icy dread consumed her. "Stay close." The shadows thrashed angrily, lunging forward as she once again grasped on hope. "Stay behind me, we'll find him." Twisted figures slithered through darkness, their forms elongated and jagged, arms reaching, mouths gaping. But the sound of Max's cries fueled her with strength. A jolt of clarity ignited as she realized these phantoms were feeding on their fear. "Your fear keeps you here," the voice echoed, weaving cruelly through her resolve. "Join us, leave this life behind." "No." The defiance burst from Sarah like a charged bullet. She had lost too much already, she couldn't lose them. Suddenly, Lily gasped, her hollow eyes widening as they reached the end of the corridor, a door shrouded in creeping vines of shadow. "Mommy, it's him." She pointed, panic rising in her throat. "Max." Sarah shouted again, urgency pouring from her. With a firm grip, she shoved the door open only to be greeted by a void so cold, it felt as if it were reaching into her very soul. Shadows shot into the crack, swirling around them like vultures waiting for their prey. "Come to us, Sarah," the voice wheedled, seductive and hungry. "Why fight what you cannot escape?" As dread twisted in her chest, she felt Lily tugging at her sleeve. "Mommy, we can't go in there. It's worse." Her blood turned to ice. What was there to lose? The risk mattered little. She refused to leave Max behind. "We're going. Now." Foot slamming against the wooden floor, she barreled through. And then darkness fell, heavy and dense, swallowing her whole. When Sarah stumbled into that abyss, a scream ripped through the silence, but was it Max's scream? Or her own? Something slid through the darkness. A hissing breath swept past her, and as she blinked, she was no longer alone. Shapes shifted, eyes glinted. The game wasn't just beginning. No, it had been waiting for them all along. "Will you play with us?" A whisper slithered, cold as death. The walls groaned in response, and as panic flared anew, more than fear gripped her. Sarah's fight was destined to morph into a desperate race against whatever shadowed horrors were lurking behind her very fears. The house had chosen its prey. But amidst the chaos and the echoes, a new voice broke out from the depths. Let the games truly begin. Could she turn the tide in time to save them? Or would the final curtain drop, and her family vanish into eternal darkness? As the clutches of darkness wrapped around her tightly, Sarah stumbled forward in the void, fear guiding her every movement. Shadows lurked, ready to ensnare her in their grasp. "Max." "Lily." She called again, voice trembling yet fierce against the weight of the silence. She could feel their presence lingering, both near and far, in the twisted depths of the house that was now her nemesis. With no choice left but to confront the nightmare, she drew upon her determination, ready to face whatever awaited her. Suddenly, a flicker of light pulsed through the suffocating darkness, drawing her closer. It flicked and danced like a candle flame fighting against the wind, illuminating a small room that exuded a faint warmth above the chilling dread surrounding her. "Mommy." The voice was unmistakable. Max's. A shudder of relief surged within her, fighting against the ice in her veins. "I'm coming." She rushed toward the flickering light, hoping against hope that it would guide her to her children. Finally bursting through the doorway, she entered a dim chamber, walls adorned with scattered remnants of her life, a childhood picture of her family, echoes of laughter hanging in the air, distant yet inviting. Shapes shifted in the corners, merging with her memories like a twisted kaleidoscope. The shifting shadows kept her on edge as she scanned the room for signs of her children, but only memories surrounded her. Then came the chilling laughter, sharp and cruel, reverberating off the walls and morphing into something darker. "They're all here, Sarah. Playtime never ends," the familiar voice echoed, suffused through the air, igniting her dread. Sarah clenched her fists, mustering her resolve. "Not while I'm here," she shouted, shaking off the despair clawing at her insides. At last, she spotted them, Max and Lily, sitting cross-legged on the floor where shadows coiled around them like dark serpents. Their faces glowed eerily against the soft light, eyes wide, yet showing signs of terror mixed with grimy glee. "Mommy," they sang in perfect harmony, voices sweetened with an unsettling innocence that made her stomach drop. "You're one of us now." "No," Sarah cried, whipping her head toward them. She could not lose them to the house's twisted game. "Listen to me, this isn't real. You must come with me." Desperation clawed at her voice, rising to a frenzied pitch. Suddenly, another figure emerged from the shadows, a dark silhouette looming behind her children, grinning with a predatory edge. It extended a shadowy hand toward Max and Lily. "Come play, children. Why escape when you can join in the fun?" The shadows grew oppressive, clawing at Sarah's mind, but she seized the moment. "No!" she shouted, lunging forward. "You want to take them. I'll fight." As she brandished the knife she hadn't realized she still gripped, she felt heat radiating through the fear, flashes of her past burrowed into her mind, stitching together all that had been lost. Her love for her children radiated like a beacon, slicing through the heavy fog of despair. "Max. Lily. Remember how we used to laugh together? I'm your mom, and we can get out of here. Trust me." Their faces shifted, confusion threading through them, a crack in the shadows. But then the darkness laughed, a cold sound that jittered through her. "Children can't hear you when they play. They've lost their way." With a determined roar, Sarah lunged for her children, dodging the encroaching shadows as she cried out, "You can break free. I will not let this darkness have you." She pulled them into a fierce embrace, drawing on their love to help pierce the veil, and in that moment, she felt the pull relentless. Would she fade into obscurity, another lost mind in this nightmare? The figure shrieked with rage, and just as it lunged forward, Sarah rallied every ounce of courage in her being. "We are together in this, forever." A surge of warmth engulfed them, and in response, the shadows recoiled. The laughter turned to howls of fury, pressing against her from all sides. Clutching her children tighter, she envisioned the light, the love that bound them. In an instant, the room exploded into blinding brilliance, and Sarah felt the darkness ripping away, fragmenting. The shadows screamed, all-consuming before bursting and dissipating like the wilting dust of broken dreams. There, standing in the heart of their safely lit kitchen, her family was whole again. The toys lay scattered across the floor, remnants of an unfathomable terror. The house recoiled, the once dreadful outlines of the walls melting away, surrendering to the dawn. "We made it," Sarah whispered, clutching her children. They looked at her with clarity, their eyes shining bright and innocent, fed by the warmth of her love. As she cradled them close, she realized the fight had molded her, the love forged stronger than the shadows' whispers. The burden of darkness lifted, revealing a community bathed in sunlight. Later, amidst laughter and healing, Sarah left the cursed house behind. It would stand empty, a mere shell of horror stripped of its power, forgotten by time and claimed by the light. With her children in hand, she stepped into a new life, one free from the shackles of fear. And you, dear friend, don't let the shadows linger. If you want more stories like this, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed that hungry algorithm. Don't wait even one more second, flood the comments with your thoughts and theories about this ending. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this tale. Together, let us embrace the light.